All right, so today we're looking at the effect of employee count on revenue. I'm Matthew Brooks.
And I'm Timothy Guice, and we'll be presenting this slideshow today.
All right, so let's get started. So we're looking at our question, which is how do changes in employee count affect a firm's revenue in the service industry? And we're looking specifically at the fast food industry. In this case, fast food is a good reference point for what we're trying to do here because it is something that is worldwide and it is something that is very employee driven. So hopefully we are going to see that increases and decreases in those numbers of employees will affect revenue in a linear fashion. So we are coming to our hypothesis here, what we are testing.
Yes, our null and alternative hypotheses. Our null hypothesis H0 is that a change in employee count does not affect revenue. And our alternative hypothesis H1 is that a change in employee count does affect revenue. As with most hypothesis testing, we are assuming that our null hypothesis is true, and we're going to see if our data allows us to reject that hypothesis. And I will also note that our level of significance for this hypothesis testing is 0.05. And I don't really have much else to add to this slide. Do you?
No, we can go ahead and head on to our next slide. So we're going to talk about our data sets. So in this case, we are dealing with a very large industry, again, worldwide. What we're looking at in this industry is a lot of publicly trading chains. And we're looking at the years 2009 to 2024. So we are looking at three chains here, which are some of the top three. We have McDonald's, we have Starbucks, and we have, last but not least, Yum Brands, conglomerate. They are over Taco Bell, KFC, a few others, correct?
That's correct. And I just add that we got this data from a website called Macro Trends, which is a very helpful website. We were able to get the annual revenue and annual employee count for those years from that website, which compiles its data from publicly available records. These are publicly traded corporations, and so they are required to issue public financial statements each quarter and each year.
Yep. And in this slide as well, I have links, hyperlinks on each of these to take us to the pages where we got that information from. So if we don't have anything else here, we can move on. So we're going to look at our summary statistics here. And before testing our hypothesis, we performed a comparative analysis of employee count and revenue for our three firms. And we have some charts ahead that are going to show the results from from computing our summary statistics for employee count and our revenue variables.
Yes, so here we have our summary statistics for employee count for each firm: mean, median, variance, standard deviation, minimum, maximum, and sample size. And I would just note that we can get a better sense of how to compare these firms on employee count in a later slide where we have a visualization of the employee count for each firm for this period of time. And I'll just note that we have McDonald's leading in the mean and median, and we have Yum Brands in last place in the mean and median. We can also look at their mins and maxes to get some idea of their range of values. Is there anything you'd like to add, Matthew, for this slide?
No, nothing really. We can go ahead and move on to our next slide, which is going to be looking at our revenue.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll note that the dollar values are in millions of dollars for this table. And I would also note that once again we see McDonald's leading in the mean and median, and Yum down in the mean and median. And once again, we can look at the minimum and maximum values to get an idea of the range of revenue values, which we have a box plot later that'll give a better sense of that. And also, we have the same summary statistics for revenue that we reported for employee count in the previous slide. So, are you ready for the next slide?
Yeah, let's go on to the next slide. All right, so
So, we have our visualizations coming up.
We've created graphs to compare the employee count and revenue variables, and these graphs are shown in the next few slides.
Wonderful. So here we have a Tableau bar graph to compare the employee count by firm and year. So McDonald's, those are the green bars, Starbucks is shown by the orange bars, and Yum Brands is shown by the blue bars. And I would just note that McDonald's, we seem to have growth up until around 2014. Then we have kind of a steady decline. Starbucks, we have a mostly steady growth up to 2022, then a slight decline to 2024. And in Yum Brands around 2015, there's a dramatic drop off from around 500,000 to a little under 100,000 employees. And then we still see some more decline.
And I will note here, just for presentation, and to keep things a little straight, we are following this color scheme as we come forward. I don't know if you'd mentioned that or not.
I don't think I'd mention it, but yeah, we will try to follow the color scheme of green for McDonald's, orange for Starbucks, and blue for Yum Brands.
Okay. So we can go ahead and head over to our next slide. So here we are looking at our revenue distribution over this time period. And though we don't have any, time-based data here, we're not looking at an array. We are looking at sort of the minimum and maximum and the range that each of these firms were operating in during that time and what their revenue was.
Yes, and our revenue is given in millions of dollars, and we'll see that Starbucks has the widest range of these three firms, which, if you looked at it chronologically, it had consistent revenue growth over this time period. And you'll see that McDonald's much narrower range, but in a pretty decent range of values in billions of dollars for a fast food chain, while Yum Brands is at the lower range of revenue values, which they suffered some revenue decline for this period.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to the box plot here, Matthew?
No, I think we're good to move on.
Perfect.
So we can go ahead and get into our revenue for employee count by firm. So we're looking at our revenue in millions and our employee count. And if we look at this here, we can see there's a much more linear trend in Starbucks.
Yes. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. And it is also something we can note about Yum Brands that things are a little more broken apart in the differences in on the graph here, and there. I mean, we could equate that to several things too. I mean, if you think about it too, of the corporations listed, they have multiple smaller subsections of this larger corporation. So there's going to be a lot of difference within that. But what we're looking at here as a whole, though, is going to be our revenue and employee count.
Yes, and I would just add that we'll get a clearer idea of these trend lines for each of these when we go to the results of our simple regression, simple regression test, which should give our slope and vertical intercept values. And I would also note that this graph was made in Excel and the box plot was made in RStudio. if you're wondering how we got these.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Matthew?
Not here. We can go ahead and move forward and get into that regression that you're mentioning, though.
Yes, the regression, the meat of it.
So if we're looking at our analysis here, so we're getting back to that HO and H1. So we performed a simple linear regression test, assuming, like you said before, a significance level of 0.05. And I have that table here with our summarized results from that regression, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yes, so our adjusted R squared values can tell us what percentage of the change in revenue we can relate to a change in employee count. So that's the adjusted R squared value column. And then the last four columns basically give us the parameters for a linear equation that could approximate the changes in revenue based on changes in employee count. So the employee count coefficient M, that's the slope of the line, is given, and the intercept coefficient B, you can think of that as the vertical intercept, is given. And then we have a p-value for each, which the p-value will tell us if these parameters should be accepted or rejected. And the p-value, we will accept these parameters if the p-value is less than 0.05, which all of these p-values for the parameters are less than 0.05, except for the p-value for the intercept coefficient for Starbucks, which is greater than that value. But we still have a pretty strong correlation between employee count and revenue for Starbucks.
Yeah, and we can look forward to putting a number on that correlation. You know, like you mentioned, our R square value is going to show our percentage of correlation. So with Starbucks, we have 90% of our growth in revenue that can be attributed to that increase in employees. If we look at Yum Brands, we have about 47% of our change in revenue that we can attribute. And with McDonald's, they're the lowest at about 30% of their change being correlated to their change in number of employees.
Yes, and that pretty much sums it up for this slide. And so we can go to our conclusion slide.
Okay.
We reject the null hypothesis. There is an effect that that employee count has on revenue for these firms, but the effect it has varies by firm.
Yes, and to look into why that is, why we have a different amount of correlation between each firm, there are certainly more variables that we could look at to have a more in-depth view and analysis of, you know, what other factors are present, and that would be something for some future research to really dive into.
And that's the great thing about one research project is that it answers some questions and it leads to other fruitful questions. And I would just add that the differences in revenue distributions for the firms we saw can possibly lead us in one direction to think about what factors might be at play there. And I don't know that I have much else to add to this slide. Do you, Matthew?
No, I think we can go ahead and just wrap things up.
Okay, well, thank you for presenting this slide with me, Matthew.
Sir, thank you for all your hard work and input here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.